I created this video in Pages 3 in order to help people like myself with learning disabilities study for the hazardous material endorsement for your commercial driver's license, CDL. For best results, you should download a copy of the PDF document, CDL Manual Part 2, found at the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles website. Then you should play this video while reading along with the PDF. If you are like me, hearing and seeing this information multiple times will help prepare you for the test at the RMV CDL Manual Part 2, Section 9, Hazardous Materials. In order to get a hazardous material endorsement on your CDL, you must pass a written test about transporting hazardous materials. Everything you need to know to pass the written test is in this section. This section is for drivers who will haul hazardous materials requiring placards. This section covers the intent of the regulations, driver responsibility, communications rules, loading and unloading, bulk tank loading, unloading, marking, driving and parking rules, emergencies. Hazardous materials are products that pose a risk to health, safety, and property during transportation. The term is often shortened to HAZMET, which you may see on road signs, or the initials HM is often seen in government regulations. Hazardous materials include explosives, various types of gases, solids, flammable and combustible liquids, and other materials. Because of the risk involved and the potential consequences that these risks impose, the handling of hazardous materials is very heavily regulated by all levels of government. The hazardous material regulations are found in Parts 171-180 of Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations. The common reference for these regulations is 49 CMR 171-180. The hazardous material table and the speculations contain a list of these items. However, this is not all-inclusive. Whether or not a material is considered hazardous is based on its characteristics and the shipper's decision on whether or not a material meets a definition of a hazardous material in the regulations. The regulations require vehicles transporting certain types or quantities of hazardous materials to display diamond-shaped square on-point warning signs, called placards. This section is designed to assist you in understanding your role and responsibilities in hauling hazardous materials. Due to the constantly changing nature of government regulation, it is impossible to guarantee absolute accuracy of the materials in this section. It is essential that you have an up-to-date copy of the complete regulations. Included in these regulations is a complete glossary of terms. Everything you need to know to pass the written test is in this section. However, this is only the beginning. Most drivers need to know much more on the job. You can learn more by reading and understanding the federal and state rules applicable to hazardous materials, as well as attending hazardous material training courses. These courses are usually offered by your employer, colleges and universities and various associations. You can get copies of the federal regulations through your local government printing office, bookstore, and various industry publishers. Union or company offices often have copies of the rules for driver use. Find out where you can get your copy to use on the job. The regulations require training and testing for all drivers involved in transporting hazardous materials. Your employer or a designated representative is required to provide this training and testing. Hazardous materials employers are required to keep a record of that training on each employee as long as the employee is working with hazardous materials, and for 90 days thereafter. The regulations require hazardous material employees to be trained and tested at least once every 2 years. The regulations also require that drivers have special training before driving a vehicle transporting certain flammable gas materials or highway route controlled quantities of radioactive materials. In addition, drivers transporting cargo tanks and portable tanks must receive special training. Each driver's employer or their designated representative must provide such training. Some locations require permits to transport certain explosives or bulk hazardous waste. States and counties also may require drivers to follow special hazardous material routes. The federal government may require permits or exemptions for special hazardous material cargoes such as rocket fuel. Find out about permits, exemptions, and special routes for the places you drive. Section 9.1. The intent of regulations. Contain the material, communicate the risk, assure safe drivers and equipment. Transporting hazardous materials can be risky. The regulations intend to protect you, those around you, and the environment. They tell shippers how to package the material safely and drivers how to load, transport, and unload that material. These are called containment rules. To communicate the risk, shippers must warn drivers and others about the material's hazards. The regulations require shippers to put hazardous warning labels on packages, provide proper shipping papers, emergency response information, and placards. These steps communicate a hazard to the shipper, the carrier, and the driver. In order to get a hazardous material endorsement on your CDL, you must pass a written test about transporting hazardous materials. To pass the test, you must know how to identify what are hazardous materials, safely load shipments, properly placard your vehicle in accordance with the rules, and safely transport shipments. Learn the rules and follow them. Following the rules reduces the risk of injury from hazardous materials. Taking shortcuts by breaking the rules is unsafe. Rule breakers can be fined and put in jail. Inspect your vehicle before and during each trip. Law enforcement officers may stop and inspect your vehicle. When stopped, they may check your shipping papers, vehicle placards, the hazardous material endorsement on your driver's license, and your knowledge of hazardous materials. Section 9.2 Hazardous Materials, Transportation. Who does what? The shipper's responsibilities. The shipper sends products from one place to another by truck, rail, vessel, or airplane. The shipper uses the hazardous material regulations to determine the product's proper shipping name, hazardous class, identification number, correct packaging, correct label and markings, correct placards. The shipper must package, mark, and label the materials, prepare the shipping papers, provide emergency response information, and supply placards. The carrier's responsibilities. The carrier takes a shipment from the shipper to its destination. The carrier, prior to transportation, checks that the shipper correctly described, marked, labeled, and otherwise prepared shipment for transportation. The carrier will refuse any improperly prepared shipments. The carrier will report accidents and incidents involving hazardous materials to the proper government agency. The driver's responsibilities. The driver will make sure the shipper has identified, marked, and labeled the hazardous material properly. The driver will refuse leaking packages and shipments. The driver will placard his vehicle when loading if required. The driver safely transports a shipment without delay. The driver follows all special rules about transporting hazardous materials. The driver keeps all hazardous material shipping papers and emergency responders information in the proper place. Section 9.3 Communication Rules. Definitions. Some words and phrases have special meanings when talking about hazardous materials. Some of these may differ from meanings you are used to. The words and phrases in this section may be on your test. The meaning of other important words are in the glossary at the end of section 9. A material's hazardous class reflects the risk associated with it. There are 9 different hazard classes. The Hazardous Material Hazard Class Division table tells the exact meaning of each hazard class. Hazard Class 1, Division 1.1, Mass Explosives, example dynamite. Division 1.2, Projection Hazards, example flares. Division 1.3, Mass Fire Hazards, example display fireworks. Division 1.4, Minor Hazards, example, ammunition. Division 1.5, Very Intensive, example blasting agent. Division 1.6, Extremely Intensive, example explosive device. Hazard Class 2, Division 2.1, Flammable gases, example propane. Division 2.2, Non-flammable gases, example helium. Division 2.3, Poisonous and toxic gases, example fluorine, compressed gas. Hazard Class 3, Division 3.0, Flammable liquids, example gasoline. Hazard Class 4, Division 4.1, Flammable solids, example ammonium picrate. Wetted. Division 4.2, Spontaneous combustible, example, white phosphorus. Division 4.3, Spontaneous combustible when wet, example sodium. Hazard Class 5, Division 5.1, Oxidizers, example ammonium nitrate. Division 5.2, Organic peroxides, example methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. Hazard Class 6, Division 6.1, Poison toxic material, example, potassium cyanide. Division 6.2, Infectious substance, example anthrax virus. Hazard Class 7, Division 7.0, Radioactive, example uranium. Hazard Class 8, Division 8.0, Corrosive, example battery fluid. Hazard Class 9, Division 9.0, Miscellaneous hazardous materials, example polychlorinated biphenyls PCB. The shipping paper describes the hazardous material being transported. Shipping orders, bills of lading, and manifests are all shipping papers. Section 9.4. After an accident or hazardous material spill or leak, you may be injured or unable to communicate the hazards of the materials you are transporting. Firefighters and police can prevent or reduce the amount of damage or injury at the scene, if they know what hazardous materials are being carried. Your life, and the lives of others, may depend on quickly locating the hazardous material shipping papers. For that reason, the rules require shipping papers to describe hazardous materials correctly and include emergency responders' telephone number on the shipping papers. The rules require carriers and drivers to put tabs on hazardous material shipping papers or keep them on top of the other shipping papers and keep the required emergency responders' information with the shipping papers. The rules require drivers to keep hazardous material shipping papers in a pouch on the driver's door, or, in clear view, within immediate reach, while the seat belt is fastened, while driving, or, on the driver's seat when the driver is out of the vehicle. Shippers put diamond-shaped, hazard warning labels on most hazardous materials packaging. These labels inform others of hazard. If the diamond label will not fit on the package, shippers may put labels on tags that are securely attached to the packages. For example, compressed gas cylinders that will not hold a label will have tags or decals. Placards, Placards are used to warn others of hazardous materials. Placards are signs put on the outside of a vehicle which identify the hazard class of the cargo. A placarded vehicle must have at least 4 identical placards. They are put on the front, rear, and both sides of the vehicle. Placards must be readable from all 4 directions. They are 10 3/4 inch, square on point, in a diamond shape. Cargo tanks and other bulk package display the identification number of the contents on the placards, or orange panels, or white on-point displays that are the same size as the placards. There are 3 main lists used by shippers, carriers, and drivers when trying to identify hazardous materials. Before transporting a material, look for its name on 3 lists. Some materials are on all lists, others only on one. Always check the following lists. Section 172.101, the Hazardous Materials Table. The Index A. To Section 172.101, the list of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. Appendix B to Section 172.101, the list of marine pollutants. The Hazardous Material Table. This image shows part of the Hazardous Material Table. Column 1 tells which shipping modes the entry affects and other information concerning the shipping description. The next 5 columns show each material's shipping name, hazard class or division, identification number, packaging group, and required labels. 5 different symbols may appear in column 1 of the table. The symbol, +, shows the proper shipping name, hazard class, and packing group to use, even if the material doesn't meet the hazardous class definition. The symbol, A, means the material described in column 2 is subject to the HMR, only when offered or intended for transportation by air, unless it is a hazardous substance or hazardous waste. The symbol, W, means that as this material described in column 2 is HMR, only when offered or intended for transportation by water, unless it is a hazardous substance, or hazardous waste, or marine pollutants. The symbol, D, means the proper shipping name is appropriate for describing materials for domestic transportation, but may not be proper for international transportation. The symbol, I, identifies the proper shipping name that is used to describe materials in international transportation. A different shipping name may be used when only domestic transportation is involved. Column 2 lists the proper shipping names and descriptions of regulated materials. Entries are in alphabetical order so you can more quickly find the right entry. The table shows proper shipping names in regular typeface or font. The shipping papers must show proper shipping names. Names shown in italic font or typeface are not offer shipping names. Column 3 shows a material's hazard class or division, or the entry forbidden. Never transport a forbidden material. You placard shipments based on the quantity and hazard class. You can decide which placards to use if you know the 3 things. The material's hazard class. The amount being shipped. The amount of all hazardous materials of all classes on your vehicle. Column 4 lists the identification number for each proper shipping name. Identification numbers are placed by the letters UN or NA. The letters NA are associated with proper shipping names that are only used within the United States and to and from Canada. The identification number must appear on the shipping papers as part of the shipping description and also appear on the package. It also must appear on the cargo tanks and other bulk packaging. Police and firefighters used this number to quickly identify hazardous materials. Column 5 shows the packing group assigned to the material. Column 6 shows the hazard warning labels shippers must put on the packages of hazardous materials. Column 7 lists additional, special, provisions that apply to this material. Column 8 is a three-part column showing the section numbers covering the packaging requirements for each hazardous material. Please note, column 9 and 10 do not apply to transportation by highway. Appendix A to 172.101, the list of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. The DOT and EPA want to know about spills of hazardous substances. They are named in the list of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. See Figure 9.53 of the list shows each product's reportable quantity, RQ, when these materials are being transported in a reportable quantity or greater. In one package, the shipper displays the letters RQ on the shipping papers and packaging. The letters RQ may appear before or after the basic description. You or your employer must report any spill of these materials, which occurs in a reportable quantity. If the words inhalation hazard appear on the shipping papers or packaging, the rules require display of poison or poison gas placards, as appropriate. These placards must be used in addition to other placards which may be required by product's hazardous class. Always display the hazard class placard and the poison placard, even for small amounts. Figure 9-5 The shipping paper shown in Figure 9-6 describes a shipment. Shipping papers for hazardous materials must include page numbers. If the shipping paper has more than one page, the first page must tell the total amount of pages. For example, page 1 of 4. A proper shipping description for each hazardous material. And a shipper's certification, signed by the shipper, saying that they prepared the shipment according to the rules. The item description. If the shipping paper describes both hazardous and non-hazardous products, the hazardous material will be either described the first, highlighted in a contrasting color, or identified by the initial X, placed before the shipping name in a column captioned HM. The letters R, Q, may be used instead of X, if a reportable quantity is present in one package. The basic description of hazardous materials include proper shipping name, hazard class or division, the identification number, and the packing group, if any, in that order. The packing group is displayed in Roman numerals and may be preceded by the initials PG. The shipping name, hazard class, and identification number must not be abbreviated, unless specifically authorized in the hazardous material regulations. The description must also show the total quantity and unit of measure. The letters RQ, if a reportable quantity. If the letters RQ appear, the name of the hazardous substance, for NOS, and generic descriptions, the technical name of the hazardous material. The shipping papers must also list an emergency responder's telephone number. The emergency responder's telephone number is the responsibility of the shipper. By emergency responders to obtain information about any hazardous material involved in a spill, fire or crash. Shippers must also provide emergency response information to the motor carrier for each hazardous material being shipped. The emergency responder's information must be able to be used away from the vehicle, and must provide information on how to safely handle incidents involving the material. It must include information on the shipping name of the hazardous material, risk to health, fire, explosion, and initial methods of handling spills, fires, and leaks of the material. Such information can be on the shipping paper or some other document that includes the basic description and technical name of the hazardous material. or it may be in a guidance book such as the Emergency Response Guidebook. ERG motor carriers may assist shippers by keeping an ERG on each vehicle carrying hazardous materials. The driver must provide the emergency response information to any federal, state, or local authority where responding to a hazardous material incident or investigating one. Total quantities must appear before or after the basic description. The packaging type and the unit of measurement may be abbreviated. For example, 10 CTNS, paint, 3, UN 1263, PG 2500 LBS. The shipper of hazardous waste must put the word waste before the proper shipping name of the material on the shipping paper, hazardous waste manifest. For example, waste acetone, 3, UN 1090, PG 11. A non-hazardous materials may not be described by using hazardous class or identification number. When the shipper packages hazardous materials, he or she certifies that the package has been prepared according to the rules. The signed shipper's certification appears on the original shipping paper. The only exceptions are when a shipper is a private carrier transporting their own product, and when the package is provided by the carrier, for example, a cargo tank. Unless the package is clearly unsafe, or does not comply with the HMR, you may accept the shipper's certification concerning proper packaging. Some employers have additional rules about transporting hazardous materials. Follow your employer's rules when accepting shipments. Package markings and labels. Shippers print required markings directly on the package, an attached label, or tag. An important package marking is the name of the hazardous materials. It is the same name as the one on the shipping paper. When required, the shipper will put the following on the package: the name and address of shipper or consignee, the hazardous materials shipping name and identification number, the labels required. If rules require it, the shipper will put RQ or inhalation hazard on the package. Packages with liquid containers inside will also have package orientation markings with the arrows pointing in the correct upright direction. The labels used always reflect the hazard class of the product. If a package needs more than one label, the labels will be close together, near the proper shipping name. Recognizing hazardous materials. Learn to recognize shipments of hazardous materials. To find out if the shipment includes hazardous materials, look at the shipping paper. Does it have an entry with a proper shipping name, hazard class, and identification number? A highlighted entry, or one with an X or RQ in the hazardous materials column? Other clues suggesting hazardous materials. What business is the shipper in? Paint dealer? Chemical supply? Scientific supply house? Pest control or agricultural supplier? Explosives, munitions, or fireworks dealer? Are there tanks with diamond labels or placards on the premises? What type of package is being shipped? Cylinders and drums are often used for hazardous materials shipments. Is a hazard class label, proper shipping name, or identification number on the package? Are there any handling precautions? Hazardous waste manifest. When transporting hazardous wastes, you must sign by hand and carry a uniform hazardous waste manifest. The name and EPA registration number of the shippers, carriers, and destination must appear on the manifest. Shippers must prepare, date, and sign by hand the manifest. Treat the manifest as a shipping paper when transporting the waste. Only give the waste shipment to another registered carrier or disposal treatment facility. Each carrier transporting the shipment must sign by hand the manifest. After you deliver the shipment, keep your copy of the manifest. Each copy must have all needed signatures and dates, including those of the person to whom you delivered the waste. Placarding. Attach the appropriate placards to the vehicle before you drive it. You are only allowed to move an improperly placarded vehicle during an emergency, in order to protect life or property. Placards must appear on both sides and ends of the vehicle. Each placard must be easily seen from the direction it faces. Placed so the words or numbers are level and read from left to right. At least 3 inches away from any other markings. Kept clear of attachments or devices such as ladders, doors, and tarpaulins. Kept clean and undamaged so that the color, format, and message are easily seen. To decide which placards to use, you need to know the hazard class of the materials, the amount of hazardous materials shipped, the total weight of all classes of hazardous materials in your vehicle. Always make sure that the shipper shows the correct basic description on the shipping paper and verifies that the proper labels are shown on the packages. If you are not familiar with the material, ask the shipper to contact your office. There are 2 placard tables, Table 1 and Table 2. Table 1 materials must be placarded whenever any amount is transported. Except for bulk packaging, the hazard classes in Table 2 need placards only if the total amount transported is 1,001 pounds or more including the package. Add the amounts from all shipping papers for all the Table 2 products you have on board. You may use dangerous placards instead of separate placards for each Table 2 hazard class when you have 1,001 pounds or more of 2 or more Table 2 hazard classes, requiring different placards, and you have not loaded 5,000 pounds or more of any Table 2 hazard class material at any one place. You must use the specific placard for this material. If the words inhalation hazard are on the shipping paper or package, you must display poison placards in addition to any other placards needed by the product's hazard class. You need not use explosives 1.5, oxidizer, and dangerous placards if a vehicle contains Division 1.1 or 1.2 explosives and is placarded with explosives 1.1 or 1.2 placards. You need not use a Division 2.2 non-flammable GAS placard on a vehicle displaying a Division 2.1 flammable GAS or for oxygen a Division 2.2 oxygen placard. Placards used to identify the primary hazard class of a material must have the hazard class or division number displayed in the lower corner of the placard. No hazard class or division number is allowed on placards used to identify a secondary hazard class of a material. Placards may be displayed for hazardous materials even if not required so long as the placard identifies the hazard of the material being transported. Loading and unloading. Do all you can to protect containers of hazardous materials. Don't use any tools which might damage containers or other packaging during loading. Don't use hooks. Before loading or unloading, set the parking brake. Make sure the vehicle will not move. Many products become more hazardous when exposed to heat. Load hazardous materials away from heat sources. Watch for signs of leaking or damaged containers, leaks, spill, trouble. Do not transport leaking packages. Depending on the material, you, your truck, and others could be in danger. Containers of Class 1 explosives, Class 3 flammable liquids, Class 4 flammable solids, Class 5 oxidizers, Class 8 corrosives, Class 2 gases, and Division 6.1 poisons must be braced to prevent movement of the packages during transportation. No smoking. When loading or unloading hazardous materials, keep fire away. Don't let people smoke nearby. Never smoke around. Class 1 Explosives, Division 2 Flammable Gas, Class 4 Flammable Solids, Class 5 Oxidizers, Class 3 Flammable Liquids. Secure against movement. Brace containers so they will not fall, slide, or bounce around during transportation. Be very careful when loading containers that have valves or other fittings. After loading, do not open any package during your trip. Never transfer hazardous materials from one package to another while in transit. You may empty a cargo tank, but do not empty any other package while it is on the vehicle. Cargo heater rules. There are special cargo heater rules for loading. Class 1 Explosives, Class 3 Flammable Liquids and Division 2.1 Flammable gas. The rules usually forbid use of cargo heaters, including automatic cargo heater air conditioner units. Unless you have read all the related rules, don't load the above products in a cargo space that has a heater. Use closed cargo space. You cannot have overhang or tailgate loads of Class 1 Explosives, Class 4 Flammable Solids, Class 5 Oxidizers. You must load these hazardous materials into a closed cargo space unless all packages are fire and water resistant. Covered with a fire and water resistant tarp. Explosives. Turn your engine off before loading or unloading any explosives. Then check the cargo space. You must disable cargo heaters. Disconnect heater power sources and drain heater fuel tanks. Make sure there are no sharp points that might damage cargo. Look for bolts, screws, nails, broken side panels, and broken floorboards. Use a floor lining with Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Class A or B explosives. The floors must be tight and the liner must be either non-metallic material or non-ferrous metal. Use extra care to protect explosives. Never use hooks or other metal tools. Never drop, throw, or roll packages. Protect explosive packages from other cargo that might cause damage. Do not transfer a Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Class A or B explosive from one vehicle to another on a public roadway except in an emergency. If safety requires an emergency transfer, set out red warning reflectors, flags, or electric lanterns. You must warn others on the road. Never transport damaged packages of explosives. Do not take a package that shows any dampness or oily stain. Do not transport Division 1.1 or 1.2 Class A explosives in triples or in vehicle combinations if there is a marked or placarded cargo tank in the combination. The other vehicle in the combination contains Division 1.1A initiating explosives. Packages of Class 7 radioactive materials labeled Yellow 3 Division 2.3 poisonous gas or Division 6.1 poisonous materials. Hazardous materials in a portable tank, on a DOT Spec 106A or LOA tank. Class 8 corrosive materials. If loading by hand, load breakable containers of corrosive liquid one by one. Keep them right side up. Do not drop or roll the containers. Load them onto an even floor surface. Stack carboys only if the lower tiers can bear the weight of the upper tiers safely. Do not load nitric acid above any other product, or stack more than 2 high. Load charged storage batteries so their liquid won't spill. Keep them right side up. Make sure other cargo won't fall against or short-circuit them. Never load corrosive liquids next to or above Division 1.4 Explosives C. Class 4 Flammable Solids. Class 5 Oxidizers. Division 2.3 Zone B Poisonous Gases. Never load corrosive liquids with Division 1.1 or 1.2 explosives A. Division 1.2 or 1.3 explosives B. Division 1.5 blasting agents. Division 2.3 zone of poisonous gases. Division 4.2 spontaneously combustible materials. Division 6.1 PGI zone of poison liquids. Class 2 compressed gases including cryogenic liquids. If your vehicle doesn't have racks to hold cylinders, the cargo space floor must be flat. The cylinders must be held upright or braced laying down flat. In racks attached to the vehicle. In boxes that will keep them from turning over. Division 2.3 poisonous gas or Division 6.1 poisonous materials. Never transport these materials in containers with interconnections. Never load a package labeled poison or poison gas in the driver's cab or sleeper or with food material for human or animals' consumption. Class 7 radioactive materials. Some packages of Class 7 radioactive materials bear a number called the Transport Index. The shipper labels these packages Radioactive 2 or Radioactive 3, and prints the package's Transport Index on the label. Radiation surrounds each package, passing through all nearby packages. To deal with this problem, the number of packages you can load together is controlled. Their closeness to people, animals, and unexposed film is also controlled. The Transport Index tells the degree of control needed during transportation. The total Transport Index of all packages in a single vehicle must not exceed 50. Bulk packaging marking, loading and unloading. The glossary at the end of this section gives the meaning of the word bulk. Cargo tanks are bulk packagings permanently attached to a vehicle. Cargo tanks remain on the vehicle when you load and unload them. Portable tanks are bulk containers which are not permanently attached to a vehicle. The product is loaded or unloaded while the portable tanks are off the vehicle. Portable tanks are then put on a vehicle for transportation. There are many types of cargo tanks in use. The most common cargo tanks are MC306 for liquids and MC331 for gases. Markings. You must display the identification number of the hazardous materials in portable tanks and cargo tanks and other bulk packaging such as dump trucks. Identification numbers are in column 4 of the hazardous materials table. The rules require black 100 mm 3.9-inch numbers on orange panels, placards, or a white, diamond-shaped background if no placards are required. Specification. Cargo tanks must show retest date markings. Portable tanks must also show the lessee or owner's name. They must also display the shipping name of the contents on two opposing sides. The letters of the shipping name must be at least 2 inches tall on portable tanks with capacities of more than 1,000 gallons and 1 inch tall on portable tanks with capacities of less than 1,000 gallons. The identification number must appear on each side and each end of a portable tank or other bulk packaging that hold 1,000 gallons or more and on two opposing sides, if the portable tank holds less than 1,000 gallons. The identification numbers must still be visible when the portable tank is on the motor vehicle. If they are not visible, you must display the identification number on both sides and ends of the motor vehicle. Tank loading. The person in charge of loading and unloading a cargo tank must be sure a qualified person is always watching. This person watching the loading or unloading must be alert. Have a clear view of the cargo tank. Be within 25 feet of the tank. Know of the hazards of the materials involved. Know the procedures to follow in an emergency. Be authorized to move the cargo tank and able to do so. Close all manholes and valves before moving a tank of hazardous materials, no matter how small the amount in the tank or how short the distance. Manholes and valves must be closed to prevent leaks. Flammable liquids. Turn off your engine before loading or unloading any flammable liquids. Only run the engine if needed to operate a pump. Ground a cargo tank correctly before filling it through an open filling hole. Ground the tank before opening the filling hole, and maintain the ground until after closing the filling hole. Compressed gas. Keep liquid discharge valves on a compressed gas tank closed except when loading and unloading. Unless your engine runs a pump for product transfer, turn it off when loading or unloading. If you use the engine, turn it off after product transfer, before you unhook the hose. Unhook all loading/unloading connections before coupling, uncoupling, or moving a chlorine cargo tank. Always chock trailers and semi-trailers to prevent motion when uncoupled from the power unit. Hazardous materials. Driving and parking rules. Never park with Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Class A or B explosives within 5 feet of the traveled part of the road. Except for short periods of time needed for vehicle operation necessities, for example, fueling, do not park within 300 feet of a bridge, tunnel, or building. A place where people gather. An open fire. If you must park to do your job, do so only briefly. Don't park on private property unless the owner is aware of the danger. Someone must always watch the parked vehicle. You may let someone else watch it for you only if your vehicle is on the shipper's property, on the carrier's property, on the consignee's property. You are allowed to leave your vehicle unattended in a safe haven. A safe haven is an approved place for parking unattended vehicles loaded with explosives. Designation of authorized safe havens are usually made by local authorities. You may park a placarded vehicle not laden with explosives within 5 feet of the traveled part of the road only if your work requires it. Do so only briefly. Someone must always watch the vehicle when parked on a public roadway or shoulder. Do not uncouple a trailer and leave it with hazardous materials on a public street. Do not park within 300 feet of an open fire. Attending parked vehicles. The person attending a placarded vehicle must be in the vehicle, awake, and not in the sleeper berth, or within 100 feet of the vehicle and have it within clear view. Be aware of the hazards of the materials being transported. Know what to do in emergencies. Be able to move the vehicle, if needed. No flares. You might break down and have to use stopped vehicle signals. Use reflective triangles or red electric lights. Never use burning signals, such as flares or fusees, around a tank used for Class 3 flammable liquids or Division 2.1 flammable gas, whether loaded or empty. Vehicle loaded with Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Class A or B explosives. Route restrictions. Some states and counties require permits to transport hazardous materials or wastes. They may limit the routes you can use. Local rules about route and permits change often. It is your job as driver to find out if you need permits or must use special routes. Make sure you have all needed papers before starting. If you work for a carrier, ask your dispatcher about route restrictions or permits. If you are an independent trucker and are planning a new route, check with state agencies where you plan to travel. Some localities prohibit transportation of hazardous materials through tunnels, over bridges, or other roadways. Check before you start. Whenever placarded, avoid heavily populated areas, crowds, tunnels, narrow streets, and alleys. Take other routes, even if inconvenient, unless there is no other way. Never drive a placarded vehicle near open fires unless you can safely pass without stopping. If transporting Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Class A or B explosives, you must have a written route plan and follow that plan. Carriers prepare the route plan in advance and give the driver a copy. You may plan the route yourself if you pick up the explosives at a location other than your employer's terminal. Write out the plan in advance. Keep a copy of it with you while transporting the explosives. Deliver shipments of explosives only to authorized persons or leave them in locked rooms designed for explosives storage. A carrier must choose the safest route to transport placarded radioactive materials. After choosing the route, the carrier must tell the driver about the radioactive materials and show the route plan. No smoking. Do not smoke within 25 feet of a placarded cargo tank used for Class 3 flammable liquids or Division 2.1 gases. Also, do not smoke or carry a lighted cigarette, cigar, or pipe within 25 feet of any vehicle which contains Class 1 explosives, Class 3 flammable liquids, Class 4 flammable solids, Class 5 oxidizers. Refueling with engine off. Turn off your engine before fueling a motor vehicles containing hazardous materials. Someone must always be at the nozzle, controlling fuel flow. 10 BC fire extinguisher. The power unit of placarded vehicles must have a fire extinguisher with a UL rating of 10 BC or more. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. Check placarded vehicles with dual tires at the start of each trip and when you park. You must stop and check the tires every 2 hours or 100 miles, whichever is less. The only acceptable way to check tire pressure is to use a tire pressure gauge. Do not drive with the tire that is leaking or flat except to the nearest safe place to fix it. Remove any overheated tire. Place it a safe distance from your vehicle. Don't drive until you correct the cause of the overheating. Remember to follow the rules about parking and attending placarded vehicles. They apply even when checking, repairing, or replacing tires. Do not accept a hazardous materials shipment without a properly prepared shipping paper. A shipping paper for hazardous materials must always be easily recognized. Other people must be able to find it quickly after an accident. Clearly distinguish hazardous materials shipping papers from others by tabbing them or keeping them on top of the stack of papers. When you are behind the wheel, keep shipping papers within your reach with your seatbelt on, or in the pouch on the driver's door. They must be easily seen by someone entering the cab. When not behind the wheel, leave shipping papers in the driver's door pouch or on the driver's seat. Emergency response information must be kept in the same location as the shipping paper. A carrier must give each driver transporting Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 Class A or B explosives a copy of Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations FMCSR, Part 397. The carrier must also give written instructions on what to do if delayed or in an accident. The written instructions must include the names and telephone numbers of people to contact, including carrier agents or shippers, the nature of the explosives transported, the precautions to take in emergencies such as fires, accidents, or leaks. Drivers must sign a receipt for these documents. You must be familiar with, and have in your possession while driving, the shipping papers. Written emergency instructions. Written route plan. A copy of FMCSR, Part 397. Equipment for chlorine. A driver transporting chlorine in cargo tanks must have an approved gas mask in the vehicle. The driver must also have an emergency kit for controlling leaks in dome cover plate fittings on the cargo tank. Stop before railroad crossing. Stop before a railroad crossing if your vehicle is placarded, carries any amount of chlorine, has cargo tanks, whether loaded or empty, used for hazardous materials. You must stop 15 to 50 feet before the nearest rail. Proceed only when you are sure no train is coming. Don't shift gears while crossing the tracks. No smoking. Warn others. Keep people away. Avoid contact or inhaling. Emergency Response Guidebook (ERG). The Department of Transportation has a guidebook for firefighters, police, and industry workers on how to protect themselves and the public from hazardous materials. The guide is indexed by proper shipping name and hazardous materials identification number. Emergency personnel look for these things on the shipping paper. That is why it is vital that the proper shipping name, identification number, label, and placards are correct. Incidents. As a professional driver, your job at the scene of an accident is to keep people away from the scene. Limit the spread of material, only if you can safely do so. Communicate the danger of the hazardous materials to emergency response personnel. Provide emergency responders with the shipping papers and emergency response information. Follow this checklist. Check to see that your driving partner is okay. Keep shipping papers with you. Keep people far away and upwind. Warn others of the danger. Send for help. Follow your employer's instructions. Fires. You might have to control minor truck fires on the road. However, unless you have the training and equipment to do so safely, don't fight hazardous materials fires. Dealing with hazardous materials fires requires special training and protective gear. When you discover a fire, send for help. You may use the fire extinguisher to keep minor truck fires from spreading to cargo before firefighters arrive. Feel trailer doors to see if they are hot before opening them. If hot, you may have a cargo fire and should not open the doors. Opening doors lets air in and may make the fire flare up. Without air, many fires only smolder until firemen arrive, doing less damage. If your cargo is already on fire, it is not safe to fight the fire. Keep the shipping papers with you to give to emergency personnel as soon as they arrive. Warn other people of the danger and keep them away. If you discover a cargo leak, identify the hazardous materials leaking by using shipping papers, labels, or package location. Do not touch any leaking material. Many people injure themselves by touching hazardous materials. Do not try to identify the material or find the source of a leak by smell. Toxic gases can destroy your sense of smell and can injure or kill you even if they don't smell. Never eat, drink, or smoke around a leak or spill. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, do not move it any more than safety requires. You may move off the road and away from places where people gather, if doing so serves safety. Only move your vehicle if you can do so without danger to yourself or others. Never continue driving with hazardous materials leaking from your vehicle in order to find a phone booth, truck stop, help, or similar reason. Remember, the carrier pays for the cleanup of contaminated parking lots, roadways, and drainage ditches. The costs are enormous, so don't leave a lengthy trail of contamination. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, park it. Secure the area. Stay there. Send someone else for help. When sending someone for help, give that person a description of the emergency, your exact location and direction of travel, your name, the carrier's name, and the name of the community or city where your terminal is located. The proper shipping name, hazard class, and identification number of the hazardous materials, if you know them. This is a lot for someone to remember. It is a good idea to write it all down for the person you send for help. The emergency response team must know these things to find you and to handle the emergency. They may have to travel miles to get to you. This information will help them to bring the right equipment the first time, without having to go back for never move your vehicle, if doing so will cause contamination or damage the vehicle. Keep downwind and away from roadside rests, truck stops, cafes, and businesses. Never try to repack leaking containers. Unless you have the training and equipment to repair leaks safely, don't try it. Call your dispatcher or supervisor for instructions and, if needed, emergency personnel. Class 1 Explosives. If your vehicle has a breakdown or accident while carrying explosives, warn others of the danger. Keep bystanders away. Do not allow smoking or open fire near the vehicle. If there is a fire, warn everyone of the danger of explosion. Remove all explosives before separating vehicles involved in a collision. Place the explosives at least 200 feet from the vehicles and occupied buildings. Stay a safe distance away. Class 2 Compressed Gases. If compressed gas is leaking from your vehicle, warn others of the danger. Only permit those involved in removing the hazard or wreckage to get close. You must notify the shipper if compressed gas is involved in any accident. Unless you are fueling machinery used in road construction or maintenance, do not transfer a flammable compressed gas from one tank to another on any public roadway. Class 3 Flammable Liquids. If you are transporting a flammable liquid and have an accident or your vehicle breaks down, prevent bystanders from gathering. Warn people of the danger. Keep them from smoking. Never transport a leaking cargo tank farther than needed to reach a safe place. Get off the roadway if you can do so safely. Don't transfer flammable liquid from one vehicle to another on a public roadway except in an emergency. Class 4 Flammable Solids and Class 5 Oxidizing Materials. If a flammable solid or oxidizing material spills, warn others of the fire hazard. Do not open smoldering packages of flammable solids. Remove them from the vehicle if you can safely do so. Also, remove unbroken packages if it will decrease the fire hazard. Class 6 Poisonous Materials and Infectious Substances. It is your job to protect yourself, other people, and property from harm. Remember that many products classed as poison are also flammable. If you think a Division 2.3 poison gases or Division 6.1 poison materials might be flammable, take the added precautions needed for flammable liquids or gases. Do not allow smoking, open flame, or welding. Warn others of the hazards of fire, of inhaling vapors, or coming in contact with the poison. A vehicle involved in a leak of Division 2.3 poison gases or Division 6.1 poisons must be checked for stray poison before being used again. If Division 6.2 infectious substances package is damaged in handling or transportation, you should immediately contact your supervisor. Packages which appear to be damaged or show signs of leakage should not be accepted. Class 7 Radioactive Materials. If radioactive material is involved in a leak or broken package, tell your dispatcher or supervisor as soon as possible. If there is a spill, or if an internal container might be damaged, do not touch or inhale the material. Do not use the vehicle until it is cleaned and checked with a survey meter. Class 8 Corrosive Materials. If corrosive spill or leak during transportation, be careful to avoid further damage or injury when handling the containers. Parts of the vehicle exposed to a corrosive liquid must be thoroughly washed with water. After unloading, wash out the interior as soon as possible before reloading. If continuing to transport a leaking tank would be unsafe, get off the road. If safe to do so, try to contain any liquid leaking from the vehicle. Keep bystanders away from the liquid and its fumes. Do everything possible to prevent injury to others. The National Response Center helps coordinate emergency response to chemical hazards. It is a resource to the local police and firefighters. It maintains a 24-hour toll-free line. You or your employer must phone when any of the following occur as a direct result of a hazardous materials incident: a person is killed. An injured person requires hospitalization. Estimated property damage exceeds $50,000. The general public is evacuated for 1 or more hours. 1 or more major transportation arteries or facilities are closed or shut down for 1 hour or more. Fire, breakage, spillage, or suspected radioactive contamination occurs. Fire, breakage, spillage or suspected contamination occurs involving shipment of etiologic agents, bacteria or toxins. A situation exists of such a nature, e.g., continuing danger to life exists at the scene of an incident that, in the judgment of the carrier, should be reported. Persons telephoning the National Response Center should be ready to give their name and address of the carrier they work for, phone number where they can be reached, date, time, and location of incident, the extent of injuries, if any, classification, name, and quantity of hazardous materials involved, if such information is available, type of incident and nature of hazardous materials involvement, and whether a continuing danger to life exists at the scene. If a reportable quantity of hazardous substance was involved, the caller should give the name of the shipper and the quantity of the hazardous substance discharged. Be prepared to give your employer the required information as well. Carriers must make detailed written reports within 30 days of an incident. The Chemical Transportation Emergency Center CHEMTREC in Washington also has a 24-hour toll-free line. CHEMTREC was created to provide emergency personnel with technical information about the physical properties of hazardous materials. The National Response Center and CHEMTREC are in close communication. If you call either one, they will tell the other about the problem when appropriate. CHEMTREC 800-424-9300. This concludes the audio-video study guide for preparation for the Hazardous Materials Endorsement Test. I sincerely hope you found this to be helpful.